But before I realized what was going on, Davy was moving quite rapidly now away from the beach into the ocean. And not only Davy, but me as well. With every second, it seems that we were being swept away another 10 yards. Nervousness turned into real concern. I decided to swim toward Davy to get us turned around. And so I started swimming with the current to try to catch up to him. By the time I got close to him, I could tell he already noticed that something was wrong. I think he saw it in my eyes. The water was really choppy and swift and powerful. And I saw panic in his eyes as he struggled to keep afloat. And just then another swell of water went over him and his head went under. And then when he came up, his head was just on the surface of the water, just barely above the water. And when he just kind of mumbled the words out, "I can't help." And I can't describe to you the chilling terror that gripped me as I heard those words. Real concern turned into absolute bridled panic. I had to get to him. And when I got close enough, he reached out and he grabbed my forearm right here. We were at least together now. But as Davy clung to me, he stopped swimming and we both went underwater. When we came up again, gasping for air, I quickly looked at the beach in total disbelief at how far we had been taken. I doubted anyone would hear us if we yelled. A million thoughts raced through my mind, and I concluded that Davy and I didn't have the strength to return, and no one on shore could help us or reach us in time. We were about to die, perhaps 5 or 10 minutes at the most, but there was no way we were getting back. Of that, I was certain. What happened in the next few seconds would save our lives. I'll get back to that in a few minutes. It was a strange deal when we got back to shore. Unspeakable relief mixed with disbelief and shock at what had just happened. A terrible ordeal was over, or so we thought. When I reached the beach, I immediately collapsed and started vomiting. But that was no big deal to me. I'd worked out a whole bunch of times, pushing my body to the limit, and so throwing up was not a big deal. I remember telling my dad, "Man, Dad, this feels like 2 decathlons in one." I said, "Just let me lay down a while, I'll be fine." But I wasn't. 5 minutes turned into 10, 10 into 20, and I wasn't getting better. It was starting to get dark and a little colder. And finally, my dad said, we got to get you to a doctor. And so they carried me, took me to the van, and we headed back to town. When the doctor checked me out, he took my vitals, checked my blood sugar, and said that I'd be all right with a little bit of rest. It might take a while for my body to recover from the trauma of it all, but I should be fine, no reason to think otherwise. But something bad was silently taking place inside of my body, undetected. Over the next 3 days, I tried to rest as much as possible, but I was still having a hard time keeping food down. By the time we were scheduled to fly back to Chicago, I began to notice that I was starting to swell in my midsection, and I was starting to feel increasingly uncomfortable. I explained to my wife, it felt like a basketball full of water just got shoved inside of my stomach. It hurt to move too quickly. My wife, Leanne, made an appointment with our family practitioner for the next morning as soon as we returned to Chicago. And when we arrived at the doctor's office, the person that was attending us took one look at me and said, "You know what? You need to go to the emergency room right now. What you have, we can't help you with here." I remember thinking, man, how bad do I look? We immediately went to the emergency room where they did a full blood test this time. And the doctor sat down with us to review the results with quiet calm, like if he was just describing the weather, said, "Well, everything here looks good, except for your creatinine level, which is at 12.7. It should actually be below 1.7. It appears you are experiencing acute renal failure, and so we've scheduled you for dialysis right away. We'll need to implant a catheter in your neck so we can get started as soon as possible." And I remember thinking, like, well, my head was just spinning, trying to absorb what he was saying. I was like, whoa. I came in for a stomach ache. What are you telling me? Basically, he said, "We're not sure why, but your kidneys have shut down." The doctors later would diagnose the condition as rhabdomyolysis, which produced, see if I get this right, acute tubular necrosis. A lot of fancy medical terms to say that because of the extreme physical exertion, too much protein, too much muscle breakdown occurred, and it put too much protein, which is what muscles are made out of, into the bloodstream. The protein clogged the tubes in my kidneys that are there to try to keep the blood clean. Essentially, the kidneys were overwhelmed and shut down as a result. They told me that they see these kinds of things in marathon runners and triathletes who push their body beyond the limits, or crush victims where too much impurities get in the bloodstream.